Welcome, everyone. I couldn't be more excited to be here today. My name is Victoria Cabot. I am based here in beautiful San Diego. I have been an EOS implementer for 8 years, and recently I joined the EOS Worldwide team as the Director of Client Engagement. And so it's my privilege to be here today for the Strong in 6 campaign. Can you believe it? We are in week 3 already. It is data week. This is like run through the 6 key components of your business, getting strong in 6, because this is, after all, an operating system for your business, and you can't pick and choose just one thing. You have to be strong in all 6. If you have missed any of the other presentations, these are all recorded. There's so much great, rich content. I couldn't believe it. I was looking at the calendar this weekend myself, and even today will be recorded. So I encourage you to lean in, pay attention, push back from your seat and be fully engaged. But if you'd like to see it again, the recording will be available. Mondays represents the first through our sprint through the week. There's great content on Wednesday, and there will be a deep dive for data on Friday. So this is just going to be a little tasting menu, a little mise-bouche of the data component today. So with that, let's begin. EOS is a system for your business, and it starts with this beautiful model. I'm going to take a first pass through it because these are the 6 key components we're trying to get strong in, and it is making the right and best decisions for your business. That's why it's right at the center of the EOS model. And it begins with creating a great vision. We've been through Vision Week, answering 8 questions, and then having it shared by all, not with all, but by all. And then people component. I got to close out people component last week. It's right people, right seats. You have to have both. All right. So you have a great vision and you have to have great people. Here we are in the data component. You can only manage what you can measure, and that's what we will be talking about today. So you have great vision, people helping you with the data, what comes up, issues. To the degree you can set them up, knock them down, and make them go away for good, you're going to be far more successful. We have a couple of folks coming in today. Maybe just make sure you're muted so we can get through the model here. Issues component is 2 tools in keeping a list and then going through the process of IDS. And then process. Hey, did you all know there's a new book in the Traction Library, in fact, called Process, ! I dug into that this weekend. It's a great book about how to go better and deeper in documenting your process. And then, of course, the other complementary to that is followed by all. Just like your vision is shared by all, you want to have your process followed by each and every person in your entire organization. And then finally, traction. As Gino says, vision without traction is hallucination. And that is that will close out Strong in 6 with traction component 4 weeks from today. So let's begin with the data component. And now as we go through today, and if you're just joining us, this is being recorded. And if you have questions while I go through the overview, please type them in the chat. I know there's a lot of us here today. And Julie, you just cut right in when you see a question that relates to something I'm going through, cut in with the Q&A. And we also have time at the end. So you feel free to hold your questions.
Great, thanks, Victoria.
Yeah. Any other housekeeping rules before I dig into data, Julie?
No, we're ready to roll.
All right, we're ready to roll. So here we go with data right there at 1 o'clock on the model. I love this quote from Jim Barksdale. He's the former Netscape CEO, and he says, if we have data, let's look at the data. But if all we have are opinions, let's go with mine. How true is that? How often do we just kind of have a gut feeling, or, it's like we know with the balance of our checking account, we look at our ATM, how much is in the bank, but we really don't have any leading indicators of our business success because we haven't really spent a lot of time here in the data component. And so we can't be subjective about this. Again, as I shared earlier, we can only manage what we can measure. So let's dig into what this data component is all about. There are 2 tools and disciplines in the data component. And the first one that I'd like to share with you here today is Scorecard. Just check in for Julie, type in the chat, how many of you actually have a scorecard that you look at on a weekly basis? Remember, the scorecard is, if you're running on EOS, you might be EOS curious today, but when you run on EOS, there's something called a level 10 meeting agenda. And in the first part of that agenda, there's simply reporting. And you'll notice that scorecard is one of the most important line items to check in on During your level 10 meeting agenda, what you're doing is you're looking at this scorecard to say, is it on track or off track? And if it's off track, that's an opportunity for a conversation. That's where you put something into the issues list. And so with that, let me jump into scorecard and share with you what is so magical about this scorecard. But I'm going to stop for a minute and share with you, before I found my way to becoming an EOS implementer, I worked for a startup here in San Diego, and our company metrics were based on basically looking at the CFO's quarterly report from last quarter, and we'd say, Jeff, we didn't hit our numbers. What happened? And he would say, I'm your CFO. I just run the report. I have no idea. The numbers are yours. And we just, unfortunately, we had no clarity on who owned the numbers. And so let me dig into the magic of this beautiful company scorecard. It's not your financial statement. That's backwards looking. That's lagging indicators. That's performance that you have no opportunity to change. The past is the past. You can only look ahead. And so this is a company scorecard. You can set it up in an Excel spreadsheet. You can use a variety of software available for companies that run on EOS. There's a great one that EOS Worldwide has just put out. It's in beta. It's called EOS 1, and you can actually put your scorecard in there.
Thanky boy.
Having a place to have your scorecard is a great place to keep it visible for everyone. And I get into accountability a little bit later, putting numbers in. But as you go from left to right, here's something that before I was involved in EOS, who owns the number? So often I would sit in meetings and we would have dashboards and we'd be looking at reds and greens, but 15 people owned the number. The beauty in the EOS company scorecard is you have a single individual person who owns each number. And as I shared with you during the check-in, to put your number, do you have numbers that you actually manage? What's your number? This is something that you just think about all the time. It influences your daily focus. It influences your regroup at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. You go, oh, I'm not going to hit my number this week. So you need to have ownership of that. So it begins with a who. From there, we go into what are we going to measure? Typically, you want to be looking at measuring on a weekly basis, because when you measure something on a weekly basis, that gives you the opportunity to look at something 52 times out of the year, right? So you can course correct, just like when a pilot is navigating, he's not looking at, are we going to get to Denver? He's not checking that halfway over from New York to Chicago. He's looking like micro movements, a little bit checking in. So you want to have measurables that are on a weekly basis. That's really the best. Yeah, sure. Sometimes there's something you want to look at monthly. That means it's only important enough to look at it 12 times a year, not 52 times a year. And if you're looking at things quarterly, you're only checking up on those things 4 times a year. And sometimes things move at a little bit slower pace. So a monthly and a quarterly measurable is okay, but really get as much as you can into the weekly. All right, so now we know who owns it, and now we have what that goal is very clearly articulated. And the most important thing is to also know, do you have a place to find that number? Do you have a reporting system in place where you can actually get that measurable? And so the goal is, what number do I need to hit on that weekly basis so that by the end of the quarter, my metrics are met, so that by the end of the year, our goals are achieved. So by the end of our 3-year picture, we have hit all the numbers. The hitting the weekly goal is just that discipline that brings the accountability and the traction into your organization. And so you're looking to refine, what is that number I need to hit on a weekly basis? And as I shared with you, as an implementer, I've gone through this exercise. We typically set this up on our very first day. When I work with teams, the first day is called Focus Day. If you've worked with an implementer, you know what Focus Day is about. And if you've self-implemented, maybe you missed the nuance of this. But in Focus Day, we set up a scorecard. And I have had teams where we have all these numbers. And then we come back in 30 days for Vision Building Day 1. And I said, how you doing? And they go, well, that's the scorecard we'd like to have. We don't have any way to measure that. And so you want to make sure that you can actually put the numbers on a weekly basis. So you need to go into some other reporting system. Sometimes it can be simple. I have some numbers that I use to run my responsibilities at EOS Worldwide. And it's just a pencil check on my daily planner so that I know that I'm achieving these things. Because here's where the magic in the scorecard occurs. You're looking on a weekly basis, but then you have over to the right, the 13-week rolling. This is where you're actually not only looking at what you've done on a weekly basis, but how did we do over 13 weeks rolling? I can't remember 13 weeks ago, and I would challenge you, you probably can't remember what happened 13 weeks ago either. And so once you begin populating the scorecard, you begin to get trend. It's a trend line, just like you would look at maybe your, well, nobody wants to look at their stock portfolio today, but you can look and see, you know, in a stock, how is that stock done over time? And this is that same type of visibility for your business. And so I say here, the trend can be your friend. You can look and see, and I'm going to get to an example of a scorecard here in a minute, where you were off track, and then all of a sudden you're beginning to feel the ramifications of that in your business. I liken the scorecard metrics to, you know, we've all been in the shower, and I was just in a hotel last weekend, and I was at the very last room at the end, and I turned that water in, and I waited and I waited and I waited and I waited. And then, you know, it finally got hot and I scalded myself, and then I turned it down and I waited and it got cold. I mean, there was a long lag time because the activities weren't necessarily related to the outcome. And so when you have the 13-week rolling, you begin to see how much of a leading indicator it is that it influences your business. So I just explained what the company scorecard is. It is having ownership of individual numbers. It is having and refining a number. It's setting a weekly goal for as many as you can, and then having the trend. And I'll get to how many numbers you own in just a minute. So here are examples of measurables. Some of these are leading, some of these are lagging, some of these are just great for information. But you want to get as many as you can that are leading. You're looking at what you want, kind of working your way back, getting as leading indicators. How many proposals did we send out? Because we know if we send out 10 proposals, eventually we'll know that we get maybe 5 callbacks.
Hello.
We get 2 contracts. So
So tired.
we're looking at things like proposals to see how we close business. You want to be looking at things like your sales pipeline or your operations pipeline, and just finding the 1 or 2 numbers that give you predictors of success. Customer rating, everybody's looking at customer satisfaction scores. You need obviously a way to measure that. You want to know cash on hand, AR, AP. For operations, oftentimes errors is something that's really important. And then just conversion, social media. Your social media folks will come in with probably 50 numbers that they want to share with you. But what you're looking for are summaries, percentages, aggregates. And now I'm speaking to the scorecard at the leadership team level. What you're looking for is 3 to 5 numbers for each person. It's not micromanaging departments with multiple numbers, but just a simple scorecard that allows you to do this. And let me share a story with you, what you're looking for. So we all want to travel right now, right? We have our favorite place that we're going, and let's say you find that destination, you're at Disneyland, and somehow you get the magic ticket thrown to you off of the parade at the end of the day, and it says, you, James Sherwood, you can stay for a whole extra week. So James, or anybody who's watching here today, you open up your scorecard and you look at it and you see all of the numbers are on track. It's that visceral a response. You're like, yeah, I can take time off from my business. I can stay for a whole another week because you see that scorecard is on track. You don't want it to be a shrug. You don't want it to be something you just run by and pass through in your level 10 weekly agenda. You want it to be really the dashboard that you're looking for to help run your business. And when you think about it, let's say when you're driving a car, you have your windshield, that's in front of you, right? That's really further out. You're setting your goals like your rocks. You have your dashboard, and those are all the numbers that you want to be working on now. And you have your rear view mirror. That's kind of in the past, right? So you're looking for numbers a little bit almost equating to the size. The mirror's tiny, just a little bit in the past. The dashboard stuff's very current, and maybe a couple that are long-term, that long-term windshield view. That is really what comes together to create a really great scorecard. So with that, Julie, I'm going to take a breath. Do we have any questions in the Q&A that I should be answering at this point?
Yeah, Victoria, we have one question. from Diane Mentzer. Diane asks, we are a government contractor and I'm having trouble defining predictive metrics around sales because the sales cycle is so long.
I'm ready for meditation now.
We do track our pipeline value, but it's longer term. It's not something we can measure weekly.
That's a great question. Having a scorecard will take you, I would say on average, it can take you a full year to get to a scorecard that you really love. And I encourage you to have your scorecard as an iterative process. Try something for a quarter, and then at your quarterly session, if you're running on EOS and you have a quarterly offsite, or just if you're not, if you're still dipping your toe in the water around EOS, at the end of the financial quarter, just say, hey, how are we doing on these scorecard numbers? What can we refine and tweak? What can we add? What can we try? For those that are longer term, you need to find correlation between things that you do and the results that you get. So if you have something that's extremely long, just put it as an issue on the issues list in your weekly meeting one day and say, hey, let's talk about activities that we can do that we know will engage our client, so that when that decision occurs, even though it's so far out in the future, we have a relationship with the client. We have equity. We are a known entity. What are all the things that go into that government contract decision maker thinking about you getting a contract? You might do a after action review on a contract that you lost and say, well, why didn't we get this? Maybe some number was off. And so you put on your scorecard something like, we need to be researching so we're more accurate in this number. We know we way overestimated the cost. You might have a tracking system or a refinement you're putting into place so that when you do bid the contract out next time, you are working on those activities with more accuracy to get the bid. So that's the best answer I can give when something is really long-term. I mean, like really long-term. Just touch points with your clients. A lot of my teams put in something called QBRs, quarterly business reviews. Oftentimes we don't even think to talk to our clients proactively. It's when they call and they squawk that all of a sudden we're paying attention to them. You have that proactive outreach. How many clients you touch per quarter? How many just notes to your contact you want to make? Obviously, you don't want it to be to the point where you're like, I don't know, pandering or annoying, but just coming to people with meaningful help first, materials, ideas, things like that can be part of your outreach. If there's a clarifying follow-up question on that, I'd be happy to take it, but hopefully I have stimulated some ideas for the longer term metrics. Anything else, Julie?
One more, Victoria, from Ashley Hahn. What are good measurables to track if we don't yet have a product on the market? We are currently tracking different social and web metrics, but don't yet have a sales team, so no real calls, meetings, revenue, etc. to measure yet.
Sure. So if you're an early stage startup, good for you that you found EOS. It can be really great just to help create some foundational structure for your new organization. So if you're in early stage, you might consider how many beta users do you have? How many product failures did you have? How many more product changes? How many weeks from launch? Look at where you are in the process and figure out what do we want. It's really starting with what do you want for your business, and then back ending the weekly metrics that make sure you're going to achieve that on a timely basis. So with no product, how many hands, do you have early trial products, samples that you want to get out to people? How many influencers did we get their products in the hands of? How many posts do we have back on our product? I'm thinking back to I have a cosmetic client right now that's doing a new product line. So I'm thinking to engineer, what are they looking at? And mostly it's hitting that date of when the product is ready, right? You have go time when you want to start making revenue. So measure very heavily things in the product management cycle so that you're making sure that you hit that deadline and you're ready for things to go. Was that helpful? Again, follow-up questions are welcomed. Doing great on time. Nothing else. Okay. Everybody is digging into the numbers. All right, so here's what a company scorecard might look like. with a little magic of the animation here. I love this. We have all the people's names and we have, then it just rolls out to this 13-week rolling.
Had to refinish the floors.
And we're going to refinish the floors. Okay, do try to stay on mute here. I'm not sure why we're getting some people jumping in. But like looking at weekly revenue, and back in November, you see in this particular instance, maybe Ann was out, revenue numbers weren't hitting. So how's that going to impact our cash balance? How is that going to hit our numbers for the quarter and for the year? So what you want to do when you see that red in your weekly meeting is drop it down to your issues list. And by that, I mean, dropping it down means we're in the review part of our level 10 meeting agenda, and we're just going to say, you know what, we're going to put this on our issues list. That's what drop it down means. We're going to put it on the list today, and we're going to have a conversation about it. How do we get this back on track? So if weekly revenue is off, you might be talking about, you know, a more aggressive outbound calling. You might be looking at a little bit of sales training. You might be looking at promotions. Get that number back so that it evens out by the end of your quarter and so that you hit your year-end goals. Now, one of the questions I'm asked is, does everybody have a number? Gosh, you get the leadership team, that's pretty easy. And you get to the department heads, that's pretty easy. But then you start getting down deeper into the organization. And in EOS, we say everybody has a number. Everybody has something that impacts their delivery of value of them as a human resource to the organization. And let me give you a couple of examples. I worked with a dental office client, and we were looking at the manager who would check you in, right? And we said, well, you know, do you pay any attention to how long people are waiting in the waiting room? And she said, oh yeah, I never let anybody wait more than 20 minutes. And we all looked and startled and surprised, like 20 minutes? Nobody wants to sit in the dental office for 20 full minutes waiting, you know, to have their teeth drilled. So we need to tighten that up a little bit. And so with that, we realized, you know, let's make the wait time 5 minutes or less. Just people come in, they sit down, and then they're immediately seen for whatever, you know, a tooth service or just your teeth cleaning, because it's a place where people's anxiety could build a little bit. And with that, they changed their whole scheduling process. They changed their outbound, you know, calling their patients to remind them to come to their appointment the next day. And their service stars, Yelp reviews went up by a full 0.2 of a point. They go for 5-star reviews, and they were right at like 4.8, and they got it up to 5-star just by changing how long people waited in the waiting room. And that person in the front line had a very impactful role in that. Similarly, that same number was very important to them. You know, if you have to feed the beast on these social media reviews, Yelp and the like, the person who checked out would say, you know, how was your service today? How did you enjoy your experience? We really value referrals. Would you mind giving a review on Yelp? And that was right there on the business card when you checked out. And so that person, you know, the person that takes your money was the person responsible for the 5-star media reviews as well. And so she would track to see if, you know, either patient had posted a nice 5-star review, but first she's checking in and saying, how was everything? Did we exceed or meet your expectations today? Is there anything we can do to make your experience better? So don't discount the fact that especially your frontline people really can impact, and you can give them a number to track as well. That creates awareness and accountability. Somebody else who was, again, an office admin sitting at that front desk, her goal was to send everybody back with a smile, you know, make a joke. She was a very outgoing person, and we just said, you know, send them back to the office with a smile so they're happy to be here, and, you know, we're making their day. Everybody is in customer service. Other examples of numbers, perhaps you have people out in the field. I have construction companies, and their number is simply how many hours did they spend learning a new trade so that they become more valuable. Numbers can be part of your bench strength and succession planning because you're asking people to invest a little bit in learning and mentoring and coaching. And then finally, say everybody of the population in general, I say some people just count naturally anyway. That was the example of the woman letting people wait 20 minutes. So ask people, what is it that you count that you know you've done a good job? And then you begin to inspect that number, and is that the right number that will produce the outcomes you need to achieve your results? So that's company scorecard. If anybody wants to throw a position that you have, how do we put a number to this? Let's do a little like put Vic on the spot and see if we can come up with something. Otherwise, I'll pause here and ask Julie, do we have any questions?
We do have one question, Victoria,
Great.
from Sean Toner. What sort of measurables do you typically see for a professional services company?
Professional services. Well, I'm going to use an example. I have an insurance company and a wealth management company. Those are two examples. I don't know exactly what kind of business you're in, Sean, but for those folks, it is the outbound call. It is the quarterly business reviews. Sometimes you want to accelerate that. For the insurance company, we were actually looking to offboard some people. We wanted to have more than one line of business because you could actually add more value to your clients by having multiple policies rather than just monoline, which is, well, you just have their car insurance or you just have their house insurance and you can't really serve them as well. So it was how many monoline clients do we actually want to get rid of, and offering them other opportunities. Where else can you go with your insurance needs? You know, go to the Geico's or whatever. That's not for us, but for those multi-line clients, we could have umbrella, we could have homeowners, we could have business, we could have car, and then we could combine all of that and actually save them money. So looking at your client profiles, what do you want those service providers to do with your clients? Those metrics are very important. Obviously, touch points, conversations, special event invitations, you know, gamifying the customer relationships through numbers are ways that you can provide more value to the clients you serve. I have to share in the business that I am, because I love numbers so much. I just call it, it's a busman's holiday when I go out to businesses. And I look at myself as a consumer and ask yourself, when you have somebody who you pay money to and they bring you something that delights you, go, wow, I really wasn't expecting that. And how can you take that moment of delight that you feel as a consumer back into your service business? You know, R&D, rip off and duplicate, find things that other people are doing, and then try to find a meaningful way to bring that into your organization. And again, I say, don't do this to your team, do it with your team, because when people are allowed to weigh in on the numbers, they are far more likely to buy into the numbers. You don't want it to feel very mechanized and rote, and you know, people put the numbers, but they don't, you know, there's no buy-in. You want it to be score on the board. I went to a parents' weekend this past weekend in CU Boulder, and man, points on the board, right? Get up there, get winning. They won. We know what the score is. We're excited. Everybody rushed on the field. And I thought, man, that's how it should feel when all the numbers on your scorecard are green. You just have that winning feeling on your team. And so if you're in a service industry or, you know, whatever you're in, what numbers make your team members feel like they're winning? I hope that helped. If you have any follow-up questions, feel free to ask them. Any other questions, Julie?
Yeah, Victoria, we have one question from Christina McFarling. I did recommend that she does reach out to support at EOS Worldwide for this one, because it might be a question for tech experts, but I told her I'd run it by you. Is there a good way to track trailing 12 months in a scorecard template like this? I have a seasonal business and each week looks different. I can do it in a spreadsheet, but having a hard time figuring out in the EOS One beta.
Oh, sure. That is more of a technical question specific to that software. But if you have a season, let me speak to having a seasonal business. This is where your scorecard can and should change every season. So let's say, for example, one of the things I've done as an EOS implementer was work part of the founding team of the conference. And so we would know year over year about how many people were registering for the conference. You know, so the conference is in April, so May, June, July, you know, we'd have promotions and we'd get a surge, and then it went full price and it sort of dipped during the summer. People get busy and they don't pay attention, and then we want to make sure we're filling the seats. And so fall, the number came up again. And so every quarter we would build it just to what we knew from prior year and making sure we were trending. If we were trending hotter than the prior year, meaning achieving beyond the numbers, typically we needed to by some amount because our goals had gone up, then that was good. But if we were trending flatline, then we realized, hey, we need to communicate more, press the pedal on things we knew would drive different results. So if you are in a seasonal business, obviously, if you're in a busy season, you can't look at last quarter because maybe your volume was less. Another example that comes to mind is certainly all of our friends in the CPA and accounting business. Today was a big day. If you're here, I'm really grateful. You know, how many returns are you doing on a weekly basis so that you make sure you're going to fulfill all those clients, and now tomorrow you get to take a rest. And as far as the software, that may be just a feature that will be added in the future. There is a roadmap EOS opportunity where you can vote things up and down if you're on the beta, but do send an email to support@eosworldwide.com. Anybody, if you have a need, we'll take care of that.
Victoria, we have one more question from Eric Martin. I'm sorry, I did miss this question earlier.
Sure.
Eric says, we have a monthly team survey. When asked, I know what is expected of me in my job, employees answered as follows: 41% strongly agree, 35% agree, 17% neutral, 5% disagree. We have scorecards for every role in each department. We are a small enough company where each employee reports their previous week's scorecard results during our Monday morning meeting.
Okay.
Got it all? I know it's a lot here. Let's see. What else can we do so that all employees can strongly agree that they know what is expected of them in their job?
Great. So what I'm hearing is you have a spread of percentages that are lower than you would like. You know, you want it to be more skewed to everybody understanding, if that's an accurate summary of that question. So that's where we kind of go back to all 6 key components of our business. If you're not getting 100% or 85% or better uptake in people understanding what is expected of them, you have to go back to the other components. Go back to the vision component. Is everyone clear on where we're headed and their role in achieving that? Oftentimes, you'll find that employees, they don't have that entrepreneurial spirit or that ownership thinking. And so instilling in that, like, hey, here's where we're headed. And now you get 100% of the right people in 100% of the right seats to sign on board for that. So there could be some people issues in there. And that's where you have great tools from How to Be a Great Boss, doing the people analyzer, just looking at, I don't know if those surveys are anonymous or if you kind of look at people and say, hey, is this the right person? Are they in the right seat? And then you have the opportunity for the quarterly conversation, which I'm certain you're having, just because it sounds like you're very deep into running on EOS, making sure that person knows that that is their time to use their boss as a resource and say, hey, what more do you need? You know, we're working as a leadership team, be open and honest and vulnerable and say these scores are not where we'd like them to be. And so we're going out to each employee and saying, what can we do better? Because we want you to be happy here, living your EOS life. And we need to move the needle on these. They're just a little too low for our standards. So what can we as servant leaders for your organization do better? Bringing it into the quarterly conversation. That, if you aren't familiar with it, How to Be a Great Boss is the book that talks about quarterly conversations. And you can also download a How to Be a Great Boss toolkit. And these are for our other attendees here today. If you want to know a little bit more about running on EOS, How to Be a Great Boss will help you with some of the things that were shared in that question. I hope that was helpful. If you have a follow-up question, feel free to ask. Okay. Well, let's go with the 7 truths of a scorecard, and here they are. Oh, I didn't number them, but I should have. You have to really believe these things before you dig into this. And I hope your takeaway today is to go back and look at your numbers and just truly believe what gets measured gets done. What gets measured gets done. There's a story of Charles Schwab, not the financier, but the guy that made steel back in the early 1900s. You know, he walked on the night shift and he says, well, how many loads of steel do we make here? And, you know, nobody knew. And so he took the count, he wrote 6 on the floor in chalk, big 6, right? And the next morning, the morning crew comes in and they go, hey, what's that 6 down there on the floor? And they go, oh, well, that's how many loads of steel they made last night on the night shift. And the morning shift said, well, 6 loads. We can beat that. And sure enough, they got it to 7. Well, then the afternoon crew came in and they said, well, what's going on here? What's all this chalk on the floor? And eventually the number was they could make 9 loads of steel per shift. And that, they retooled a little bit and they changed things around, but they had just been a very ambiguous, like, well, I don't know. But once you put it up there and you have the right people in the right seats, they want to win, and then you're measuring it, you ensure that it's going to get done. Managing those metrics saves time, having it visible in that nice dashboard, as I shared. You're not always looking around for numbers, but you're asking people to own putting those numbers in on a weekly basis. Obviously at EOS Worldwide, we run on EOS One, and I'll look at the scorecard numbers right before the meeting. So I know what I want to put on the issues list. When things are off track, I'm doing my research. It's all right there for me to know how are we doing as a department. And that saves time rather than in the meeting asking for the numbers. It's all right there. Your pre-work when you're on, when you're working in a level 10 is to take a peek at that before you start your level 10. It's going to give you that pulse and that ability to predict. Weekly meeting pulse. It's the heartbeat of your business, right? Getting ready, having a great meeting, going out and doing it. Getting ready, having a great meeting, going out and doing it. That's what your pulse is all about. And your numbers are just ensuring the health of your organization. I mean, think about it. We all look at personal metrics right now. How many steps did I take? How many bottles, how many ounces of water did I drink? How much sleep did I get? These are the same metrics for your business that ensure an ability to predict and a healthy organization. You have to inspect what you expect. I've had, believe it or not, a company rolled out numbers to their sales team. It was a team of, scientists, and they were like, oh, numbers, you want us to put our numbers up? Sales, scientific sales. And they're like, well, yeah, that's part of it. We got to put our numbers up to know if we're going to meet our, they had, very big high dollar products that they sold. And eventually we got everybody on board like, okay, I got to put my numbers up. And it can be a little uncomfortable feeling sometimes. And a couple of those people stepped off the team. They didn't want to have that level of visibility in front of their peers, but that's what a winning team looks like. Envision having a football team where half your team members didn't care what the score was. It's not going to be a very good team, right? So you have to inspect what you can expect. Metrics make for accountability. And when you have a highly functional organization with high team health, people want to be held accountable. They want credit for the work that they're doing. I've said this a couple of times. It requires hard work and discipline and consistency. And every time it's up for exploration because you're raising the bar on yourself. Businesses, as they grow, go through an evolution and revolution of business. You evolve with the systems you have, and then all of a sudden they're broken. So you put new things into place. That's why we take rocks to build that capacity. And you have an evolution. So that's a point. Let's look at our scorecard. Are we measuring the right things? Are our goals high enough? If you're green all the time, put that on the issues list. Go, you know what? We've been hitting green. We probably could raise our expectations of what we would like from ourselves. And everybody must own their scorecard. You want people to think about their numbers. I'm going to go into the next slide. Let's see, measurables. So this is the accountability chart, the classic EOS accountability chart, where you have just the basic. Yours is going to look different, but you have the visionary, the integrator, sales, marketing, ops, and finance. So at the end of the day, when you're scrawling it on a whiteboard, it kind of looks like this. You have your function with it, which is the box. You have the 5 roles, and then you have some measurables. So every seat on your accountability chart needs numbers, and those numbers are part of the weekly level 10 meeting that they sit in. If it's on the leadership team, that's your leadership team scorecard. If it's departmental, that's your departmental scorecard. But I want you to see the accountability chart like this on the whiteboard, just written out, like, what's the number? Here's examples: marketing and sales owns leads and sales revenue, operations owns your production revenue and customer satisfaction scores, and your finance seat could own AR and AP. So that's how everybody has a number, and you're lucky you get to figure it out for everybody in your organization. And I always say, start with asking them. They'll usually have a pretty good idea. So with that, we have vision, people, data, issues, process, traction, the 157 issues that we face every day as entrepreneurs. Something is off in this wheel. You have an opportunity to go to EOS Worldwide and take an organizational checkup. You can do it individually or set up an account for your entire leadership team. And you will get, especially if you set up an account, you'll get the end result of how you're measuring in each of these 6 key components. You want to be 80% or better in all of them. That's our goal. And when you actually go do the organizational checkup, you can see how are we doing in the data component and could we do better? So with that, that's what I have in my toolbox. There will be on Friday a deeper dive in this. Can you imagine? And some opportunity for workshops with an implementer who I really admire. So I think you'll have a lot of fun if you tune back in on Friday. And with that, I'll say, do we have any more questions here today? I see a lot in the chat. I'm not reading it because I want to give you my best. Julie, anything else before we close out?
Yeah, lot of great information in the chat too. If you get a chance to look over it, please do. We have another question from Tabitha. How do you get your staff on board with these numbers? KPIs are boring to the average frontline employee and they aren't excited about business goal. Any tips on connecting the numbers with positivity rather than micromanagement?
Sure, I love that. I'll say, especially when I do the accountability chart, when we do sales and marketing, I kind of joke and I say, okay, raise your hand, everybody's in marketing. And by that, I mean, as business leaders, to communicate effectively, we have to find ways to get through to people. So exactly what you said, how do you get people excited about the numbers? And I would say, look to this person sitting in your marketing seat and say, we need to do some internal marketing communication strategy around these numbers. Why are they important? Sharing your goals at your state of the company, sharing with people, when we hit these numbers, we can provide, this nice environment that we have. We can continue to provide the benefits that we provide, kind of connecting the numbers to what benefits they have as employees, and then finding ways to gamify it. Sometimes my teams I work with will have a theme for the year. Sometimes it's just a theme for the quarter. And so we all want to gamify. I go back to, gosh, I remember going to Sunday school as a kid. I always wanted that gold star for showing up, right? The little attendance stars. Silly ways like that, just find ways to gamify, recognize people when they make their numbers, do a shout out if you have a core value around numbers or goals. As an EOS implementer, one of mine is do the right thing and do what you say, connected to your core values. Hey, Julie, I want to give you a core value shout out for do what you say. We're getting a great number of attendees here because you're following through on your metrics of how many outreach you want to have. We're setting up these calls. Good job, Julie. Thank you for that. Tie the recognition back to your employees. Make sure at the state of the company, you're creating it clearly in the quarterly conversation, that you're getting clear on the goals. In the departmental meeting, if it's off track, drop it down. And again, you might have some people issues, right? People, right seats, want to be held accountable. So think about internal marketing campaigns that can help you get people excited, create the momentum. And then of course, the most important thing of all is to take time to celebrate. And by that, I don't mean you have to go out and buy, pizza and give people money. It's just take a moment to pause and reflect when you've actually achieved the numbers that you've set forth. So often I observe that teams, leadership teams will set the, let's go run a marathon. And then when it's over, they look at people and they go, okay, let's go run another marathon. Like, take time, celebrate, recognize. Your words are pearls of wisdom, of gratitude to people, and they really make all the difference in the world. I hope that gives you some insights and excitement. If you have anything where you've gamified or found a way to engage people and take ownership of these numbers, type that in the chat. I like using the chat because there's wisdom here in the room and just the experience I've had as an implementer. Anything else today, Julie?
Yeah, so we have two questions from Jared Hillman. Curious to know, the first one, Victoria, curious to know what metrics anyone has ever designed to engineers or design staff.
Okay, anybody in engineering firms or design staff, you have it in here. By the way, if you're a visionary or an integrator, we have this thing called Rocket Fuel University, and you can join that for free. And with your membership there, you have an opportunity to attend visionary, integrator, or visionary and integrator calls. And somebody will even put up questions like this. I can bring my best to EOS, but if you want to talk to other people in community, those calls are a great opportunity, and there's no cost to attend those. So if you're a visionary or integrator, find your way to join Rocket Fuel University, enjoy the presentations there, and be part of our community. So again, going back to the engineering firms or scientific firms, ask them what what numbers prove success for you? Is it a completion of projects per week or number of hours spent on something? Or is it, client relationships, client training, cross-functional training? Think of what you need those folks to do in their position, and then try to find metrics around that. It could be very qualitative as well as quantitative. How many hours spent doing something or accomplishing something? Are there other examples coming up in the chat that are helpful, Julie?
Tom replied, we have web design staff and we track utilized and billable percent for the week.
Perfect, right, billable hours. And especially, I'm so glad that you shared that. I have a client that has a lot of contractors who do the billable hours. And especially, it's very hard, I have to acknowledge, for all business owners right now. People have been out on COVID, and our focus has been taken away a little bit, right? You have to bring people back. You rely on outside contractors to make your billable hours, and you have to find ways to just gently and bring them back in. Like, here's the expectation. Are you on board? Are you on board? Are you part of this? And just checking in with them and re-engaging with them to come back to, what is now the expectation. That's COVID is past, and we have to get refocused and back to work here, especially when your service providers are responsible for your revenue. Okay, how are we doing on time? We have the whole hour. Otherwise, if we don't have any more questions, I'll draw it to a close. Anything else, Julie?
Let's see, Victoria, we have Jared's second question. If your numbers are tied to that employee, knowing that they did a good job at the end of the day, it helps. How do you know that you did a good job when you leave here at the end of the day?
Yeah. So
maybe that's just a comment. Yeah, a statement more than a question. Sorry about that.
And sometimes some numbers will be tied to, you have an employee percentage of a bonus at the end of the year. You have like a certain percentage to the company performance, and then meeting your numbers throughout the year, employee performance. So you can tie some of this to a monetary increase or compensation or bonus or things like that. Anything else?
That's it for now.
Oh boy. All right, well, here we are at EOS Worldwide. What we're always looking for is to keep it real. I hope today that you were honest with yourself, that maybe your scorecard isn't where it needs to be. Very simple, less is more. Remember, 5 to 7 numbers. Don't go through 40 numbers at scorecard. That'll take up half your meeting. And then finally, driving results. You can only manage what you can measure, and that truly will deliver the results at the end of the day. So that kicks off data component for Strong in 6. Please be with us through the duration. If you're liking what you see, go to EOS Worldwide. There's downloadable tools. There's so much there. Our core values help first, so much available at no charge to you. The point of this week is to help you understand what EOS is, if you're EOS curious, or to help you do it better, faster, stronger. Please find new tools and resources, and do take one action item from today. Let's make the investment of our 50 minutes together really worth your while. So thank you very much. I'm Victoria Cabot out here in San Diego. If you have any questions, support at EOS Worldwide, or find me on LinkedIn and say hello. I'd love to connect with you.